Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Voss. I'm editor-in-chief at Disputed Media, and I'm here today to read you one of our articles. And it is going to be the article we published relatively recently, titled "All Russiagate Roads Lead to London as Evidence Emerges of Joseph Mifsud's Links to UK Intelligence." And obviously, since we published this article, we have also spoken with Chris Blackburn, who is a UK political analyst, and Disputed Media was really, thankful that he spoke to us and spent his time explaining his research in this subject. And I am either going to record videos of that, of those articles myself, or in a perfect world I would love to get Chris on to explain his thoughts about that, because I hate just kind of regurgitating his words to you all. So we'll see how that goes, but for now I will just read you this first article in the sort of series we've done at Disputed Media about Joseph Mifsud and his ties to many European and Western intelligence agents. And also this article does also cover some other strands of the Russiagate narrative that also go back to the UK. So I'll just get right into it. I wrote, over the last few months, Professor Joseph Mifsud has become a feather in the cap for those pushing the Trump-Russia narrative. He is characterized as Russian intelligence asset in mainstream press, despite his declarations to the contrary. However, evidence has surfaced that suggests Mifsud was anything but a Russian spy and may have actually worked for British intelligence. This new evidence culminates in the groundbreaking conclusion that the UK and its intelligence apparatus may be responsible for the invention of key pillars of the Trump-Russia scandal. If true, this would essentially turn the entire Russiagate debacle on its head. And to give some idea of the scope of this report, a few central points showing the UK connections with central pillars of the Trump-Russia claims are included here in order of the discussion in this article. And so if you click on the link to this article that I will include in the description of this video, you can read these points as they are presented in bullet form, but I'll just read them to you, and they're numbered 1 through 5. So the first one says, Mifsud allegedly discussed that Russia had dirt on Clinton in the form of thousands of emails with George Papadopoulos in London in April 2016. And the second point is that the following month, Papadopoulos then spoke with Alexander Downer, Australia's ambassador to the UK, about the alleged Russian dirt on Clinton while they were drinking at a swanky Kensington bar, according to the Times. In late 2016, Downer shared his tip with Australian intelligence officials who forwarded it to the FBI. And the third point is that Robert Goldstone, who was a key figure in the Trump Tower part of the Russiagate narrative, sent Donald Trump Jr. an email that claimed that Russia wanted to help the Trump campaign, and Goldstone is a music promoter, a British music promoter. So the fourth point is that Richard Steele, who is an ex-MI6 agent, worked as an MI6 agent in Moscow until 1993, and after that ran the Russia desk at MI6 headquarters in London between 2006 and 2009. He also produced the totally unsubstantiated Steele dossier of Trump-Russia allegations with funding from the Clinton campaign and the DNC. And then the fifth point is that Robert Hannegan, the head of the British spy agency GCHQ, and I should say former head of GCHQ, flew to Washington, D.C. to share director-to-director level intelligence with then CIA Chief John Brennan. And that is definitely an important point that we do discuss and elaborate on in the rest of this article. And then so that's the end of the bullet points, and so I'll just continue on with the rest of it. And I wrote, each of these strands of the UK-tied elements of the Russiagate narrative can be substantially dismantled on close inspection. This untangling process leads to the surprising conclusion that UK intelligence services fabricated evidence of collusion in order to create the appearance of a Trump-Russia connection. And this trend begins with Joseph Mifsud, a Maltese scholar with an eclectic academic history, to put it lightly, who courts described as an enigma, while legacy press has enthusiastically characterized him as a central personality in the Trump-Russia scandal. The New York Times described Mifsud as an enthusiastic promoter of President Vladimir Putin of Russia, citing his regular involvement in the annual meetings of the Valdai Discussion Club, a Russian-based think tank, as well as 3 short articles he wrote in support of Russian policies. And despite this, Mifsud strongly denied claims that he was associated with Russian intelligence, telling Italian newspaper Repubblica that he was a member of the European Council on Foreign Relations and the Clinton Foundation, adding that his political outlook was left-leaning. Last month, Slate reported that Mifsud had disappeared, as did some of the other figures linking the UK to the Trump-Russia scandal, and this aspect will be discussed in more detail below. So to contextualize Mifsud's eclectic academic career in terms of intelligence service, it is helpful to note that research undertaken by this author and Susie Dawson as part of the Decipher You project has repeatedly shown the close ties and outright merger in many cases between the intelligence community and academia. This enmeshment also takes place within think tanks, NGOs, and in the corporate sphere. In this light, Mifsud's brand of scholarship becomes much less mysterious, and Mifsud's alleged link to Russian intelligence are summarily debunked by his close working relationship with Claire Smith, who is a major figure in the upper echelons of British intelligence. A number of Twitter users, and that was when I cited via hyperlinking the phrase Twitter users, at this point in the article, that's when I was citing Chris Blackburn's tweet, and that was the instigation for my investigation originally. And then after this article was published, then I began to speak to Chris, and then that's how we came up with the articles about the conversation. So anyway, so a number of Twitter users, specifically Chris Blackburn, recently observed that Joseph Mifsud had been photographed standing next to Claire Smith at of the UK Joint Intelligence Committee, or JIC, at Mifsud's Link campus in Rome. Newsmax and BuzzFeed later reported that the professor's name and biography had been removed from the campus's website, writing that the mysterious removal took place after Mifsud had served the institution for years. WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Julian Assange likewise noted that the connection between Mifsud and Claire Smith in a Twitter thread that additionally pointed out connections between Mifsud and Saudi intelligence. And he wrote, quote, Mifsud and Claire Smith of the UK Joint Intelligence Committee and 8-year member of the UK Security Vetting Panel, both trained Italian security services at the Link University in Rome, and appear to be both present in this photo. And so the photograph in question was originated on geodiplomatics.com, where it specified that Joseph Mifsud is indeed standing next to Claire Smith, who was attending a, quote, training program on international security, which was organized by Link Campus University and the London Academy of Diplomacy. And that's the end of the quote from geodiplomatics.com. That event is listed as taking place in October 2012, and that is a highly significant date for a number of reasons that I will discuss very shortly. But if you want to see this image of Claire Smith standing with Joseph Mifsud, you can visit the article via the link that I'll put in the description of this video. But the training program that Claire Smith attended with high-ranking members of the Italian military was organized by the same London Academy of Diplomacy where Joseph Mifsud served as director, as noted by the Washington Post and other news outlets. That Claire Smith was training military and law enforcement officials alongside Mifsud in 2012, which was during her tenure as a member of the UK Cabinet Office Security Vetting Appeals Panel, which oversees the vetting process for UK intelligence placement, strongly suggests that Mifsud has been incorrectly characterized as a Russian intelligence agent and is extremely unlikely that Claire Smith's role in vetting UK intelligence personnel would lead her to just accidentally, by happenstance, working alongside a Russian asset. The connection between Mifsud and Smith does not end at bumped elbows in a photograph. Mifsud's LinkedIn profile lists the University of Stirling as a place of occupation in connection with his service as director of the London Academy of Diplomacy, or LAD, where Claire Smith served as a visiting professor from 2013 to 2014, according to her LinkedIn profile. This adds yet another verifiable connection between a man who is at the center of already flimsy Trump-Russia allegations and a high-ranking British intelligence figure. And in the article, I have included a screenshot of Claire Smith's LinkedIn profile. If you want to see that, please click the link to the article that is in the description of this video, and that will be available. But I'm just going to continue for now. So Claire Smith hosted a seminar titled Making Sense of Intelligence at the University of Stirling. The event registration form describes her career, including her service as Deputy Chief of Assessments Staff in the Cabinet Office, as a member of the UK Joint Intelligence Committee, and her completion of an 8-year term as a member of the UK Security Vetting and Appeals Panel. And all of those are really significant and in their own right show how high up she was in the echelons of British intelligence, but put together, it means that she is a powerhouse figure in the UK intelligence community. So a particularly compelling factor indicating that Mifsud's working relationship with Claire Smith suggests his direct connection with UK intelligence is Smith's membership in the UK's Joint Intelligence Committee, or JIC, which is a supervisory body overseeing all UK intelligence agencies. The JIC is part of the Cabinet Office and reports directly to the Prime Minister. So the committee also sets the collection and analysis priorities for all of the agency it supervises. And Claire Smith also served in it as a member of the UK's Cabinet Office in her own right. So in summary, Mifsud's appearance with Claire Smith at the Link campus, in addition to her discussion on intelligence at yet another university where Mifsud was also employed, as well as her long-standing role in the UK intelligence vetting and her position as a member of the UK Joint Intelligence Committee, would suggest that the roving scholar is not a Russian agent, but is actually a UK intelligence asset. The possibility that such a high-ranking member of this extremely powerful intelligence supervisory group was photographed standing next to a Russian asset unknowingly is patently absurd. This finding knocks the first pillar out from under the edifice of the Trump-Russia allegations, and it provides an initial suggestion of the UK's involvement in procuring the evidence that fueled the debacle. Claire Smith is not the only British official associated with Mifsud. He was also a speaker at an event by the Central European Initiative alongside former British diplomat Charles Crawford, whose postings included Moscow, Sarajevo, Belgrade, and Warsaw. Crawford is listed as a visiting professor with the same London Academy of Diplomacy, or LAD, where Mifsud served as director associated with Stirling University. This adds yet more weight to the idea that Mifsud is a familiar figure among the upper echelons of the UK intelligence community and also the foreign policy establishment. And the final nail in the coffin of the theory that Mifsud is a Russian spy is this photograph, which I have included in the article, which again you can click on in the description of this video, is the photograph of Mifsud standing with Boris Johnson, who is the UK Foreign Secretary, as was reported by The Guardian. So the photograph was taken in October 2017, which was nearly a full year after the US presidential election and 9 months after Mifsud's name appeared in newspaper headlines worldwide as allegedly involved in Russian meddling. So this is either highly embarrassing for the hapless Mr. Boris Johnson, or it's not, because Joseph Mifsud is actually a valued security vetted asset to the United Kingdom. And moving right along, another aspect of the Russiagate claims tied to the UK includes the reported conversation between George Papadopoulos and Alexander Downer, Australia's High Commissioner to the UK, who is based in London. The pair reportedly spoke about the alleged Russian dirt on Hillary Clinton while they were drinking at a swanky bar in London. According to LifeZet, Downer is closely tied with the Clinton Foundation via his role in securing $25 million in aid from his country to help the Clinton Foundation fight AIDS. And he is also a member of the advisory board of London-based Huckliot & Co., an opposition research and intelligence firm set up in 1995 by 3 former UK intelligence officials and described as a, quote, retirement home for ex-MI6 or British foreign intelligence officers, end quote, but it now also recruits from the worlds of management consultancy and banking, whereas opposition research Fusion GPS has received the vast majority of media attention so far. LifeZet states that Huckliot is a second, even more powerful and mysterious opposition research and intelligence firm with significant political and financial links to the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her 2016 campaign. And so we see this over and over again in this whole scandal, whether it's CrowdStrike and its association with the FBI, or whether it's Eric Schmidt's tie to the Clinton campaign. Basically, so yet another link to a central pillar of the Trump-Russia narrative is British music promoter Robert Goldstone, who was reported to have organized a meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and Russian nationals in June 2016. In the email chain setting up the Trump Tower meeting, both before and after the meeting, the only real evidence of collusion with Russia comes from Goldstone's own emails. So when he none too subtly heavily hinted that about Russian help, and that was dropped as I said, by Goldstone in those emails. But later, after they became public, this was walked back by Goldstone when he claimed that he was hyping the messages and using hot button language to puff up the information that he had been given. So it's a bit similar to Mifsud, where we have this allegation that he is a Russian asset, and then he tells us that he's not a Russian asset, that he is in fact left-leaning in his politics, and that he's a member of the Clinton Foundation and the European CFR. But as I said earlier, there's only a little bit of evidence that we can find about that, which specifically does show that he donated to the Clinton Foundation. Okay. So some have speculated that Goldstone was also involved with British or US intelligence efforts to concoct the Russiagate narrative. As soon as his name was emerged in the press, Goldstone, like Christopher Steele and Joseph Mifsud, went into hiding. Multiple press reports claimed he had done so out of fear for his safety, a claim that was also made about Christopher Steele when his name first became public. Indeed, the UK government issued a DA notice, which is a press suppression advisory notice to the British press to suppress the ex-spy Steele's name. It is notable that of all the people who are swept up in the ever-burgeoning Russiagate investigation, it is only the UK-linked witnesses, Mifsud, Steele, and Goldstone, who have felt the need to go into hiding when their role was exposed. The New York Times summed up the contents of Christopher Steele's dossier, saying, quote, Mr. Steele produced a series of memos that alleged a broad conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government to influence the 2016 election on behalf of Mr. Trump. The memos also contained unsubstantiated accounts of encounters between Mr. Trump and Russian prostitutes and real estate deals that were intended as bribes. Press reports also relate that Steele was ordered by an English court to appear for a videotaped deposition in London as part of an ongoing civil litigation against BuzzFeed for publishing the unverified dossier, for which Steele was paid $168,000 by Glenn Simpson's company Fusion GPS, who were in turn paid by Mark Elias. I don't know. I never know how to pronounce that, if it's Mark Elias or Mark Elias of the law firm Perkins Coie, who provided lawyers to both the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. So there is a distinct money trail that does lead back to the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign. In his thread on the role of UK intelligence interference in the 2016 US presidential race, Julian Assange noted how Christopher Steele used another former UK ambassador to Moscow, Sir Andrew Wood, to funnel the dossier to Senator John McCain in a way that moved the handover out of London to Canada. It's often said that no one ever really leaves the UK security services when they retire, and many former MI6 or MI5 officers' private intelligence businesses are dependent on maintaining good contacts among their ex-colleagues. So it's interesting to note that Sir Andrew Wood says he was instructed by former British spy Christopher Steele to reach out to the senior Republican whom Wood called a good man about the unverified document. Lastly, Robert Hannegan, former head of British intelligence agency GCHQ, is another personality of note in the formation of the Russiagate narrative and its surprisingly deep links to the UK. The Guardian noted that Hannegan announced he would step down from his leadership position with the agency, GCHQ, just 3 days after the inauguration of President Trump on the 23rd of January 2017. Jane Meyer, in her profile of Christopher Steele, published in The New Yorker, also noted that Hannegan had flown to Washington, D.C. to personally brief the then CIA Director John Brennan on alleged communications between the Trump campaign and Moscow. What is so curious about this briefing, which was deemed so sensitive it was handled at a director level, and that is a quote, is why Hannegan was talking to the director of the CIA in the first place, and not Mike Rogers at the NSA, which is GCHQ's Five Eyes partner and intelligence sharing partner. So again, the fact that he had that meeting with John Brennan is in itself an anomaly and interesting. And then you add to that the fact that Hannegan resigned and announced that he would give up his position at the head of GCHQ just 3 days after the inauguration of Donald Trump. So all of those things are incredibly interesting and once again tie back to the UK and London. So The central supporting pillars of the Russiagate allegations hinge on figures with close ties to British intelligence and UK nationals. Even the establishment media, like The Guardian, reported that British spies from GCHQ were the first to alert authorities to the so-called Russian interference, and did this entire narrative originate with UK intelligence groups in an effort to create the appearance of Russian collusion with the Trump presidential campaign, much as the Goose for Two persona was used in the US to discredit WikiLeaks and its publication of the DNC emails. It was not Russia at the heart of a complex operation to topple the Clinton campaign in 2016. Was British intelligence responsible for creating the false narratives and mirage-like evidence on which the Trump-Russia scandal could hinge? And that's a question. But put another way, if UK intelligence is responsible for manufacturing Trump-Russia allegations, it suggests that the UK's efforts formed an international arm running concurrently with domestic US deep state efforts to sabotage Trump's presidential campaign and or oust him once he had been elected. And finally, is British intelligence involvement in Russiagate, as outlined above, the international version of CrowdStrike and former FBI figures manufacturing the Goose for Two persona specifically to smear WikiLeaks via false allegations of a Russian hack of the DNC? Have we been looking in the wrong place at the wrong country to unearth the so-called foreign meddling in the 2016 US election all along? And that is the end of the article. Kenneth Whittle contributed some links to this report, and I really, really appreciate everyone who has looked at this article and given it the time to read it. That's it for tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate all of your support. And if you would like to support me by donating via Patreon, I will include the link for that in the description of this video. I always appreciate all of your support so much. It really does make a huge difference. And it's not just me or Disobedient Media that needs supporting, but every single independent media figure, journalist, outlet that you think is great, that has a Patreon or that has some sort of donation set up, cryptocurrency, whatever it is, please support them too, because everyone that donates to any independent journalist is actively helping to fight the establishment media and censorship that we are all subjugated to. And the other part of that is that, of course, if you don't have the cash around to donate to anyone or whatever, that's totally fine and understandable. And equally important to whatever financial donations people want to give to independent journalists, it's really, really equally important that we share information on social media, because obviously it is what the establishment is the most afraid of, is the information that is counter to their narrative getting out and seen by the eyes of millions of people. So whether it's my work and Disobedient Media's work, or whether it's the work of any other independent journalist, please do understand that when you share, that is absolutely equal to any sort of financial donation, and it is just as important in helping propel anti-establishment voices into the ears of more people. So thank you for everyone that does that. I really appreciate it. I know other independent media does appreciate it too. And with that, I will leave you with the addition of saying that if you want to find me on Twitter, you can at Elizabeth Leavos. If you want to find Disobedient Media on Twitter, it's at Disobedient News. And I'm also on Steemit, and Disobedient Media also has a Facebook page, but I'd much prefer you use Steemit. So thank you all again, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.